Hi, Arcfield Weather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Monday morning, October the 20th. It looks like a very interesting weather pattern going forward towards the end of the month of October into the early part of November. The pattern gets very energetic by later next week going into the following week, which would be the first few days of the month of November. We'll have a tropical system to watch out for over the next several days, including at the end of next week into the early part of November. We'll have some very chilly air for this time of the year moving into the central part of the U.S., a buckling jet stream, and it'll be quite interesting to see how all this plays out. Again, a very energetic pattern setting up for later next week going into the early days of November. Let's start off here by kind of focusing on the tropical activity that is currently going on, and maybe the last gasp of the Atlantic Basin tropical season. We'll just wait and see on that. But there is a strong tropical wave right about this location right here. It is not yet a named tropical system, but look at all this warm water here. These are the water temperature anomalies right now, well above normal throughout the Caribbean Sea, and it looks like this will take a track pretty much in this westward direction here over the next few days. And the temperatures here are plenty warm enough to support the development of a named tropical storm. By the way, I think it would be Melissa, and potentially intensification into hurricane status, maybe even major hurricane status as it treks slowly over these waters. Temperatures here roughly in that 85, 86, 87 degree range of Fahrenheit. Again, plenty warm enough to support the intensification of this system as it moves slowly to the west. And again, very likely becomes a named tropical storm and could very easily become a hurricane, maybe even a major hurricane as it meanders across the Caribbean into the western part of the Caribbean over the next several days. Well, we'll take a look at the latest satellite image of that tropical wave, but first let's look at the NOAA's National Hurricane Center official positioning and depiction of its movement. Again, located right in this area right here, as we saw a moment ago, over some very warm waters, and in fact it will be heading out over even warmer waters over the next few days as it meanders into the western part of the Caribbean over the next several days. Very likely becomes a named tropical storm that would be Melissa, and quite likely a hurricane, maybe even major hurricane status is in store for this system down the road a bit. Well, here's the latest visible satellite imagery loop. This is using GOES East satellite imagery, and it is past the Windward Islands into the eastern part of the Caribbean Sea, and again over some very warm waters. Environmental conditions will absolutely be conducive to intensification over the next several days. It looks like it will avoid moving over some of the big northern Caribbean islands here and just kind of stay over the open waters here as it treks to the west, and that is certainly a key if in fact it does stay over the open waters, as I expect. It will allow for further intensification here. Again, a named tropical storm, hurricane, maybe even major hurricane status by the time it reaches this part of the very warm Caribbean Sea. Well, that's just one part of the equation going forward here. And again, late next week, it looks like a very energetic overall weather pattern will be setting up. Now we'll kind of go through some of the players involved here, some of the changes that will evolve over the next several days. So you have that slow-moving tropical system, by the way, likely to stay to the east of the east coast of the U.S. However, doesn't mean that tropical moisture can't somehow get involved with an east coast system here. That's one of the things we'll watch out for over the next several days, that possibility. Now, here's a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly pattern here using last night's 0Z run of the European model. Now, we'll kind of go quickly forward. Pretty energetic pattern right now, by the way. We're seeing some deep upper level troughs already and some strong upper level ridges already on the playing field here, but they will become even more significant both on the trough side and the ridge side later next week. This represents a second push of colder than normal air across the Great Lakes by midweek into the mid-Atlantic region. There'll be another strong cold frontal passage moving through the northeastern states on Tuesday night. Perhaps not quite as strong as this last one that pushed through the region early this morning, but nonetheless there'll be showers possible tomorrow night into early Wednesday in the northeastern states with this next cold frontal system. Then we'll kind of go quickly here through the second half of the week. And notice we have some blocking here later this week over, this is Greenland right here, the northeastern part of Canada, along with that upper level trough. Watch how all of this becomes more magnified by later next week. Again, we'll go quickly through this here. Here is the end of this week here. Again, this is using the 0Z run of the European model here. Now, by the upcoming weekend, we have a very strong jet stream pushing into the northwestern part of the U.S. Pacific jet, very, very strong winds here by the weekend, pounding away at the northwestern part of the U.S. Then we go into next week. This is all the way out to next Tuesday, the 28th. And first of all, take notice here, this blocking really intensifies. You're starting to see purple here. This is way up, almost off the charts here in terms of the higher heights compared to normal. Higher pressures compared to normal, this blocking pattern here over northern Canada. At the same time, we have a chilly air mass starting to dive to the south and east from Canada into the central U.S. by the middle part of next week. And here we go by next Wednesday. Here is the reflection of that tropical system. By this time, certainly a tropical storm, maybe a hurricane, maybe even a major hurricane, Melissa, by this particular time. Again, this is all the way out to the middle of next week. And take a look at this pattern here. This is quite an energetic pattern here. We have that Pacific jet that then starts to really dive to the south. So we have this deep upper level trough and a strong block to the north here by the middle of next week. And all of this kind of coalesces across the eastern U.S., the eastern part of Canada by later next week. This is now Thursday, October 30th. Deep upper level trough centered over the upper Midwest. Tropical system here headed over Cuba at this particular time. And a strong block to the north here, kind of surrounding this upper level trough. And all this certainly sends a red flag that this will be a very energetic pattern here again later next week into the weekend, which is the beginning part of November. We'll go out a little bit farther in time. Again, the center of this tropical system likely stays off the eastern seaboard. It doesn't mean some of that tropical moisture can eventually kind of get absorbed in by this upper level trough. This is all the way out to Halloween Day, next Friday here, and all the way now out to Saturday, November 1st. And again, you have this tropical system here. You have a buckling jet stream. You have cold air push here. A volatile situation setting up for later next week going into the early part of November. Now, let's shift gears here and take a look at that jet stream. This is at the 250 millibar level, all the way up at the top part of the atmosphere. I just want to show, kind of quickly walk through here. This is over the next few days here. And then I mentioned that very strong Pacific jet. And here it is here, showing up on the maps here by later this week. These are powerful winds here, blowing across the northern Pacific, about to enter into the northwestern part of the U.S. here by the upcoming weekend. Just a very strong jet streak in the overall jet stream pattern here. This is now by Friday, and it plays a key role down the road here in the central and eastern U.S. And here we go by the latter part of the upcoming weekend. Powerful jet off the Pacific Ocean, now entering the western part of the U.S. And it is at this point in time, now we're out to Monday of next week into Tuesday of next week. You notice here how it tends to buckle substantially. By that I mean what we call zonal winds flow from west to east, but when you have an amplified pattern here, they can really buckle and kind of go meridional here from north to the south here. This is that Pacific jet, which was kind of a zonal jet. It starts to really buckle as that upper level low dives to the south and east. Now this is Wednesday of next week. And again, at this time you have strong blocking over northern Canada. You have a deep upper level trough with intense jet streak here surrounding that upper level trough. And at the same time, you have a tropical system to deal with, very likely a hurricane at this particular time. Again, all of this now is at the end of next week here. We'll go a little bit farther out in time. We're right here into Friday, Halloween Day, tropical system here, deep upper level trough over the eastern part of the U.S. and still some blocking off to the north here. A lot of details, of course, to iron out here, but this is just kind of giving the broad picture here that watch out for later next week into the early part of November. Well, let's now take a look at the 850 millibar temperature anomalies here, and very interesting for later next week. We'll have this very chilly air mass, a widespread chilly air mass. Before we get to that, over the next couple of days, yet another chilly air mass here relative to normal for this time of the year, diving across the Midwest into the Mid-Atlantic region by the middle of the week here, kind of a reinforcing shot. We have a colder than normal air mass that has pushed into the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast U.S. today. Another frontal passage on Tuesday night ushers in another cool air mass for this time of the year for Wednesday, Thursday, and even into Friday here. We're out to Thursday. Now, let's push forward quickly through the late week and now into the upcoming weekend. And you notice where that upper level ridge starts to set up over northern Canada. You have higher pressures than normal, and you have warmer temperatures than normal underneath that ridge here. But look at this pattern. You could almost see that Pacific jet stream again, which is rather zonal, west to east flow at this particular point in time. But then we get into the early part of next week, the middle part of next week, and a jet streak kind of buckles and dives to the south. And look at this by the middle of next week. I mentioned we have an energetic pattern setting up for later next week. And not only will it have a colder than normal air mass, as seen right here in the middle part of the nation, not only will it have some tropical moisture to perhaps factor in off the eastern seaboard, but this will also potentially produce some severe weather in certain parts of the nation here, so we'll have to watch out for that as well. Strong blocking over northern Canada by next Thursday, the 30th. That chilly air mass dives all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. A little bit of a reflection here in the 850 millibar temperature anomaly pattern here from that tropical system. We'll go out another 24 hours into Halloween Day next Friday. And here we have that eastern, pretty much the eastern half of the nation below normal with that tropical system off the coast. Very interesting weather pattern indeed. Well, let's wrap up with the surface forecast maps. Again, we have this frontal system that produced some overnight showers in the Mid-Atlantic region now this morning, showers and embedded thunderstorms as well with this initial cold frontal system. And this initial cold frontal system will be followed up pretty quickly by a second cold front. Here we go into the day on Tuesday, an upper level low moving across the Great Lakes. And this is chilly air right here. We have a strong northwesterly flow of air here on the backside of this next front. We'll go out a little bit farther in time into Tuesday night, and this is late tomorrow into Tuesday night, and there is indeed another follow-up cold frontal system. Chilly air moving across the Great Lakes, maybe some flakes of snow associated with this colder than normal air mass. That pushes in by Wednesday into the Mid-Atlantic, into the Northeast U.S., some of the chilliest air of the season so far. Now, let's push forward into the late week and then the upcoming weekend. Here we are on Friday, a batch of showers and thunderstorms out across the south central states. Then we'll go through the upcoming weekend and into the early part of next week, and this is now Sunday. This is that time period where that Pacific jet streak, powerful winds in the upper part of the atmosphere will start pounding away at the western U.S. and look for some rain across coastal sections from northern California up across Washington and Oregon, snow and those higher elevations associated with that jet stream. Here we go now into the early part of next week, and then this is when the pattern really gets interesting here. And we'll see how all of this plays out. Way too early to fine-tune the details on this. This particular time, the middle of next week, it could be a strong cold front right in this region. Very chilly air relative to normal, pouring in from the northwest, diving all the way down into the Tennessee Valley and potentially all the way down into the Gulf states here. This is, again, by the middle of next week. And remember, there's a strong block to the north. Then we go a little bit farther out in time here, all the way to next Thursday night. And here is a reflection of that potential hurricane. It would be Melissa at this particular time. You still have that deep upper level trough centered over the Midwest, and we'll go all the way out into Friday morning, Halloween day. Again, odds favor this tropical system staying away from the East Coast. However, it's certainly close enough. We still have to monitor it, and there can be some tropical moisture that kind of feeds back in, gets absorbed in by this upper level trough. And again, there's a lot of chilly air associated with it. Dives all the way down towards the Gulf region here by later next week. So again, we'll have to watch this. We have many days to monitor this situation, but quite interesting weather pattern setting up. Wild weather potentially later next week into the early part of November. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.